It's like 9:32 here this morning on OTB AM. We're actually just waiting now for the Court of Arbitration for Sport website to update with the decision, the press release on their verdict.
I've got the media release here, and the CAS decision is that in their typically wordy language, exclusion from participation in UEFA club competitions lifted, fine maintained, but reduced to €10 million. So CAS has issued this decision of the procedure. The case concerns an appeal filed by Manchester City and the decision in which it was deemed to have contravened the FFP and sanctions with exclusion from the UEFA club competition. So the CAS panel deliberated and have concluded that the decision issued on February 14th should be set aside and replaced by the following: that they have contravened Article 56 and that they shall pay a fine of €10 million within 30 days as from the date of issuance of the arbitral award. So the ban from UEFA competitions, it seems, has been lifted.
City are back.
They did not disguise equity funding as sponsorship contributions, but did fail to cooperate with the UEFA authorities. That is the top line this morning from the CAS release. So who cares about the €10 million?
Chump change.
Got off scot-free. €10 million would buy you a year of Jesse Lingard, and that's about it.
Chump change. So suddenly the top four, the race for the top four is far more important. I actually thought that there was like almost no prospect of this happening. I kind of had resigned myself to the fact that this was going to be, the fifth spot was going to be qualifying for the Champions League, and now all of a sudden that is not the case. So the race for the Champions League hots up significantly, and you've got to say this is not great for financial fair play and for the future of football, where this type of stuff is, going to not result in teams getting kicked out. What's the point of having your rules? We've seen this. If you don't have sanctions, everybody breaks them. And it turns out the sanction isn't actually for anything that they did. The sanction is for not cooperating.
I can remember we had Sam Lee of The Athletic on when this story first broke, what was it, in February, and he was making the point that Manchester City were supremely confident of their case. I guess when you've got as much money as Manchester City, you can be supremely confident of a lot of things. It's interesting that the initial ban seemed like this huge seismic moment in financial stories and the financial engine running European football. And now all of a sudden, when you actually dig into it, when push comes to shove, the whole case actually crumbles. So I'd be very interested in what actually comes out of this, the explanation of all of this, what Manchester City's case was.
The reasoned decision, yeah.
The reasoned decision, all that sort of thing. Like, because this is bad news, really, if for football in general, really, if rules have been skirted and they've got away with it. But obviously, according to CAS, they haven't broken any rules. And again, just to go back to it, they didn't disguise equity funding as sponsorship contributions. Which is not how it seemed at the start, but they did fail to cooperate with the UEFA authorities. So the only thing they've got done on this morning is failing to cooperate. But there was no disguising of funds.
Phil Egan,
contributions.
Phil Egan, good morning to you. What are the ramifications of this for European qualification for the future of Manchester City and their empire?
Yeah, this is a great morning for Manchester City. Not such a good morning for Leicester and Brendan Rodgers, I think, because obviously when Manchester United beat Southampton this evening, Leicester are going to be out of the top four. And the general feeling all season has been, well, since February, fifth place is going to get you that Champions League spot. But obviously that's gone now. And we know Manchester City obviously are going to finish second. So, yeah, that puts more pressure on the likes of Chelsea and Leicester. Obviously, there's pressure on Manchester United, but out of those three teams I mentioned, United are bang in form, and they're looking at third place tonight if they beat Southampton. But do you know what? I think a lot of us felt that this would be at least cut from 2 years to 1 year, and even if that was the case, it wasn't dead and buried that Manchester City would go back and say, right, it might be cut to a year, but we want it dropped altogether, and they don't even need that. The Court of Arbitration for Sport have obviously ruled that it's overturned. 10 million is really nothing to Manchester City. I mean, that's think of what they could do to their sponsorship with that one,
It means that everybody's going to stay who might have been a target. It means that they can reinvest this summer. It means that they're back, essentially.
Yeah. Like Pep Guardiola obviously had said he was going to honour his contract that runs out next summer. So obviously, we'll see how the season goes, how it impacts next season, because I was trying to think about this before I came on with you and we didn't know the decision. What would a reduction to a year have done? Because given what's happened with COVID-19, it probably actually would have been easy enough for City to keep their players, because they'd say, look, next season's Champions League and next season is going to be completely condensed because of COVID-19. The season starts a bit later. Do you really want to leave when there's so much uncertainty in terms of what's going on at the moment? Just see it out for a year. Whereas obviously if it was 2 years, we heard earlier in the season that Kevin De Bruyne had hinted, we'll have to look at things. But now Kevin De Bruyne knows that City will be in the Champions League next season. And, who knows, they could be defending the crown that they might win later on. Personally, I don't think they're going to win it. I think, since the restart, they've been good against certain teams, but they've also lost twice. And, I look at the possibility of them playing Juventus in a quarter-final, maybe even Bayern Munich in a semi-final. Those teams can be clinical, and Manchester City have struggled against teams that are clinical. And it's all well and good beating the likes of Brighton 5-0, but when you come up against the elite, you can't give them chances.
It's obviously seismic news. I think you're right, Phil. If it was reduced to 1 year, it would be similarly huge news. Because, you look at the players who were out of contract before 2023, there's not a whole pile to speak of. Like Sergio Aguero's out of contract next summer. We know that David Silva and Nicola Otamendi are going to be out of the club this year. You get into the 2022 contracts, it's only really John Stones and Ederson. Ederson will be a big contract in 2022. That would have been the real complication next season. Yeah. But the likes of your De Bruyne, your Sterlings, your Gundogan's, your Gabriel Jesus's, your Mendy's, they're all contracted until 2023. So I don't think it actually makes a whole pile of difference in that regard that they're off as opposed to getting 1 year. But what it does mean is that Manchester City can now go on the offensive in the transfer market. This year is not just about solidifying contracts, keeping players at the club. They can go out and spend big because, let us face the facts here, there hasn't been any real big punishment handed down for overspending at any point. Now, I'm not saying Manchester City would ever do that or
There's been none. There's been none. Financial fair play means nothing now. This is the end of financial fair play.
It has to be, yeah.
It does not work. It doesn't mean anything. What's happened here is that they have been able to generate massive amounts of money from sponsorship deals. Bear in mind, Manchester City, and whenever it happens, perhaps Newcastle will end up essentially representing a nation state. And if money is allowed to sluice into the system the way it has been, then there is immediately a competitive imbalance. The one check on that was supposed to be financial fair play. And now it turns out the Court of Arbitration for Sport have found that despite all of the evidence that was available, there has not been money sluicing into the system through made-up sponsorship deals. That's what the Court of Arbitration of Sport have said. So those rules that were supposed to protect against what appears to have happened now can't actually find legally that did happen. So financial fair play hasn't done the job it was supposed to do, which is preventing massive amounts of money being injected into the system. Financial fair play is over. That's what's happened here. Manchester City have issued a statement. I'm just going to read it to you. While Manchester City and its legal advisors are yet to review the full ruling of the Court of Arbitration for Sport, the club welcomes the implications of today's ruling as a validation of the club's position and the body of evidence that it was able to present. The club wishes to thank the panel members for their diligence and the due process that they administered. This is an amazing day for Manchester City to have got to this point, to have been through all the stuff that they've been through, and now to be away essentially scot-free. 10 million quid means nothing to them. And the fine is not for anything to do with any of the sponsorship deals. The fine is to do with how they responded to the investigation. That is absolutely sensational. And the fact that they can play in the Champions League, there's no asterisks beside the record. It's not going to be Manchester City were unable to defend the title if they won the title because they were kicked out. I don't know how Liverpool are feeling today. I don't know how other clubs are feeling about this, Phil.
Well, Liverpool are probably thinking, the fact that they've gone up against this machine that is Manchester City and they've absolutely dwarfed them in terms of the points tally. I mean, Liverpool can be sitting here this morning thinking they're pretty happy with themselves that they've actually been able to take on a team like Manchester City with all the resources that Manchester City have, and they've beaten them. And they'll fancy the chances of doing the same again next season. But that recruitment, you look at the deficiencies in the Manchester City team, they haven't replaced Vincent Kompany in terms of a leadership role. he played pretty well towards the end of last season, but there is defenders out there that are better than the version you got at Vincent Kompany last season. But they can go out now and get another centre half. They can go out maybe and get a better left back. They can go out and probably get a better striker. That Sergio Aguero obviously is world class, but he's been injured a lot. Gabriel Jesus isn't a like for like replacement. He tends to operate better in a wider role. So this is what they can do. And now that they have the clearance to do so, if they are Champions League winners as well, I mean, who's not going to want to go to Manchester City if you're a player somewhere else around Europe, where basically they can say, look, we run this game now, we can do whatever we want.
Phil, good stuff. Phil Egan with us, responding to the news that Manchester City are going to pay a €10 million fine, but they will be playing in next season's Champions League, and the Champions League after that, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that, because they have all the money in the world. And they're going to be able to spend it. 9:43 this morning here on OTB AM. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. We're going to pay a proper testimony to the career of Barry Geraghty next, as Hector Hucon joins us in just a moment. First, though, let's hear from Mick McCarthy, who joined us on OTB this weekend to pay tribute to Jack Charlton.